On a fireside chat. We are in season 3, episode, I think 22. Anyway, I appreciate you tuning in every month. I try to bring a topic of interest and a guest for your information and learning, and I'm excited about this one because it's a topic I have very little knowledge of. We're going to talk vacations and vacation homes and second homes, but we're going to talk about it in terms of how it could be a revenue producing, income producing, right, opportunity. And my guest, Bob Liddle, is an expert in this space, and he's going to talk about what he does, how he does it, and what is the difference. I don't know. They're a bunch of acronyms. I don't even know what the difference is. So I appreciate you tuning in. We're live. Ask questions as we go. We'll address them along the way. But in the meantime, I thank you, Bob, for spending time, taking time out of your busy day, and spending time with the audience and telling us about this whole world of VRBO and Airbnbs.
Oh, well, thank you, Diane, for having me here.
Absolutely.
So I'm Bob Liddle. My company is Co-Host Bob, LLC, and it's because I actually co-host for other owners is what my business is. And so I'm very deep into the Airbnb and VRBO world. It's called the short-term rental world, or STR is what it's called. And so what I do is I help owners who are thinking about investing, who have actually invested in a piece of property, and I help them become profitable with their rental. Managing an Airbnb or VRBO is really tough, and unfortunately in the real world you always hear the bad stories about Airbnb and VRBO, and you never hear the good stories or the success stories, and there's a lot of that out there. So my job is to coach people, help them. I do analysis to see if the house will be...
Keep going. This is what live is all about. You have to deal with the tech. Go ahead, Bob.
I'm going right
We're good.
ahead.
Go.
So I help them try to make the right decisions and help them set up their places so they'll be profitable and get the best return on investment. And that's kind of my job. So
doesn't that sound like fun? Like, that's cool. You get to go hang out in cool vacation places, and do you actually go on site, check out the homes? How's it work? So let's take it from, so somebody wants to buy a home, maybe think about it being an Airbnb type thing. Do you get involved in any of the education of what that's about? You know, because sometimes there's right? There's places you can and can't do it. I don't know if you get in any of that.
I try to coach the owners as much as possible. So,
okay.
Yeah, no, they're like, if the HOA won't allow it, that's a bad idea. There's certain counties that won't allow it.
Really?
Certain cities have different regulations and rules on that. And I'm on the North Carolina Airbnb policy team, so I get to kind of get some of the inside information before it hits the streets again. And generally speaking, in the state of North Carolina, they are backing off on regulations against short-term rentals. They're allowing more...
So they're becoming more friendly?
More friendly toward short-term rentals, yeah.
That's cool.
And Asheville, Wilmington, and Charlotte were all three pretty tough for a while, and they reeled it back in. Raleigh has toned it down a little bit too. So kind of answer your question. So a lot of times owners will say, hey, I'm looking at this property. Do you think it will be profitable?
Okay.
So I do, much like a real estate agent, I will run comps on it. I'll do some comparisons. I'll look at it and kind of try to help them make a decision on that. If it is, and they decide, hey, we're going to roll with this house, then I kind of consult with them on things that are important to get the best return on investment. A prime return on investment to me is a fire pit. You can advertise a fire pit. People are on vacation. They want to do that. It's a good little plus that people go, hey, I want to stay at this house because it has a fire pit. We can have s'mores at the end of the day.
Okay.
So I coach them on a lot of that stuff. The number of beds you have, that's a big portion of Airbnb. They call it heads and beds. The more heads and beds you have, usually the more you can rent a house for.
Okay.
So we'll coach them and say, hey, take this room, pull that full-size bed out, and set 2 sets of bunk beds in there. Now you've gone from 2 to 4, and that'll help you rent.
Okay.
So.
Interesting. And so obviously there's occupancy capacity, right, in homes. Is that true? Or yeah, okay. So you got to kind of work with that, but you're helping them. You're basically saying you're helping them max out the opportunity with whatever that is, and by giving them some other tips about amenities and features that would be important when people are trying to vacation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I do a lot of that, and then I do a lot of what's called optimizing their listings. So Airbnb has an algorithm that is very similar to the Google algorithm, where as far as how it ranks. And as you know, I've done a lot of Google work as far as ranking keywords and all. So I do the same stuff with Airbnb and VRBO, And if you do it right, your house ranks really high. Like every one of my houses is on page 1 of Airbnb.
Oh, wow.
Being on page 1 means you're going to get clicked more, you're going to get rented more, and you can get higher rates.
Okay.
So that's a big part of it. And setting that up is a tricky process. I tell my owners usually it's a good 30 plus hours to set up a listing from start to finish on Airbnb and VRBO, syncing the calendars, managing the messaging, and the whole process.
Hey, as a real estate agent who puts listings in and all, I completely understand. There is more to getting those things out there, but obviously even more when you're setting up the whole process. It sounds like you handle from soup to nuts kind of thing, like beginning to end and everything in between.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then an Airbnb is a little different because you have guests coming in on a regular basis, so you have to have lock systems set up, thermos system set up, security set up. You also have to have cleaning set up. You have to have maintenance people ready to roll if things go wrong. So we manage all of that for the owners. So like one of my owners says, what do I have to do after I sign up with you? I'm
Right.
like, basically nothing. I do it all. So pay me. That's all I ask. So, yeah.
Okay. So you run the whole show. You help people figure out whether it's good, what to do, where to maybe think about the investment,
Yeah.
and then give them some perspective on things that would help maximize the rental and the revenue.
Right.
What's some other cool, like when people are thinking about looking at, are there some, so the areas you serve, where are the places you're most helping with this? That would probably help. And then
I do, right now I have a number of locations at Lake Gaston up on the North Carolina-Virginia border. I have one location at Beach Mountain, which did fantastic. I have one in Cary, which is just, it's probably about 80% occupancy with really good rates. And then I have 2 down at Myrtle Beach, and they're actually doing really well too. So.
Okay. So I know some people are just joining in. So this is Bob Liddle, and he is a, what do you call yourself again?
It's a co-host, yeah.
Well, you're a co-host for Airbnbs and VRBOs for people that are looking to, get into that or have property that they want to have rented and all. But he basically manages them from soup to nuts and helps those owners. And so we're just talking about what does that all involve? What's his role? What is a good investment, perhaps, if you're thinking about going this path? And some tips and things about it. So, so you're more North Carolina, South Carolina, and
Virginia.
And Virginia, okay. And where? I mean, what are some things that are some good things to think about if you're thinking, I might want to get into this game a little bit.
Like if you're thinking about looking at a rental, it's a lot of seeing if there's other rentals around you and if there's reasons for people to come to that area.
Okay.
And
what's
actually,
the draw?
One of the best indicators are there other short-term rentals nearby? And then you can kind of look at those and you can look and say, hey, there's quite a few of them. And then you can kind of look and say, they're charging this much, so they're getting this much, and get some data on that.
Okay.
There's a website called AirDNA, and AirDNA gives you some pretty detailed data on how well listings are doing in that particular area. Tells you how many there are, and it breaks it down by number of bedrooms, how many they sleep, and different items like that. And so you can do some pretty deep research on that.
Okay. Wow. Who knew? I didn't know. I mean, like you say, there's a whole universe out there that don't even know about. I mean, I have no idea how this all actually works, but I thought this would be really interesting for people who are thinking about this, because I think many people are always contemplating, wouldn't it be fun to have, a second home and a vacation place and then rent it out and things like that. And how do you really do it? Is it lucrative, so to speak? What are some of the things that someone should be thinking about, asking about, besides the data of whether this is a good investment or is an area for it? What are some of the things that you should be really ready for? Maybe that's the question. If you're going to go this route, what are some things you need to be ready for as a potential owner?
Getting ready to go live is a pretty hard situation because your place has to be fully furnished. It has to have basically every amenity that a guest is going to want to have. You also want to have what's called your tech deck, which is your locking system. So it's a Wi-Fi operated locking system, a backup lock system in case that one doesn't work. I recommend my owners have a Wi-Fi thermostat, so when the guest leaves, they can turn the thermostat back to a normal temperature to kind of save money on that. There's a lot of preparation to getting ready to go live, and my owners get really nervous about that, and justifiably so, because when a guest leaves, they leave you a rating, and they all want good ratings. So you've got to do a good job of being ready. And I've learned a lot, and I'm able to troubleshoot a lot as far as things that could potentially go wrong, and try to beat them to the punch and fix it before it could possibly go wrong. So
That's awesome.
And if you've stayed in Airbnbs and VRBO, which I highly recommend, they're awesome to stay at. It's just a totally different experience. You could go stay at a hotel and you know what you're getting. You go stay at an Airbnb, there's always a surprise. Most of them are cool and good, and some of them may not be. But you walk away with a better story.
I love that, a better story.
And you kind of live someone else's life and see a little different part of the world. And I think it's just a really cool, great, awesome experience. And we travel all the time using Airbnbs, and we just...
So, we've done a couple, but so what's really the difference? This whole industry sort of came out of, I don't know, how long has this been around, this idea of, people renting out their spaces and doing things like that?
And that's a good question. So VRBO started up in the mid to late 80s.
Okay.
Airbnb came along quite a bit later than that, but Airbnb really took over the market. They had a lot more capital investment, and right now Airbnb is like a 4 times multiplier of VRBO as far as total number of listings and revenue and all.
So on that note, I didn't even know there's a difference. I feel like it's like, when people talk Q-tips or Kleenex, it becomes the name that everybody uses no matter what tissue you're grabbing.
Right.
There is a difference. Airbnb and VRBO, two different things. Tell us about that.
They're 2 different companies, and the analogy is they're basically like iPhone or Android.
Okay.
They ultimately end up doing the same thing, just slightly different. At the end result is pretty similar. Historically, it used to be VRBO was mainly families and full houses, because VRBO only does full houses, and Airbnb was considered more the younger kid, the kind of the party type atmosphere. But that's changed over time.
Surfer.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, it actually
started as couch surfing, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
The owners rented their couches in San Francisco. You're exactly right.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Airbnbs are more, you can have different spaces. Like I can take a portion of my home, for example, make it an Airbnb, versus VRBO says it's got to be a whole beach house or a whole mountain home or something like that.
Airbnb has yurts. You can rent a tent. You can rent an RV. You can rent a boat. You can rent a tree house.
Oh my goodness! So it's a whole variety of things.
It's very creative. There's a lot of different options.
And VRBO is just straight up houses.
Yeah, they're veering a little bit, but that's the general perception.
It's fine. That's their niche. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I didn't actually know there's that big difference in the 2 of them.
Yeah.
And then how people participate with them. Okay, so you are able to guide, coach, give people some good intelligence on decisions they're trying to make about maybe the purchase. Yeah. And then once they do have a property, you're able to help them kind of think about and optimize how that property could be a revenue source, and then some of the amenities that would be attractive to people. So we talked about a fire pit. What else? What are some other things people look for?
A back porch, a grill, outdoor stuff, games, books. And both platforms have a checklist of things you need to have, or not need to have, but whether you have them or not. So, TV, most TVs are smart TVs, so people come in and load their apps on. Just a comfort level. I think games and the fun stuff that people will kind of entertain themselves with is crucial to it. And it's different for different areas. So like a Raleigh versus a resort area is going to have kind of a different set of needs. So a Raleigh area, you're going to want to have a workspace. You're going to want to have just more of a comfortable area, whereas a lake house or a resort area, you're going to want the outside games, the docks, the toys, the paddle boats, the kayaks, the things like that to go with it. So when I onboard a new house, one of the things I do is we go to the house, the owners and I create a Google Doc that has every single thing about their house and what it has, and then we do a punch list of things that you need to do from either a safety aspect, or if you don't do this, you're just not gonna. It's just a really good investment, and things that would make sense to do, and then kind of a wish list of things to do. and we go through the punch list and knock it out. And then I actually spend the night in every one of my houses before they go live.
Oh, wow.
And the reason is, A, I want to make sure everything works like it's supposed to work. And B, when a guest calls and says, hey, I don't know how to turn the fan on in the living room, we can go, oh, you know, the fan's over here. Or you just never know. There may be something that's wrong with the house. I had one house I stayed at, and 6 in the morning, I hear this bam, 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 bam. And about 5 minutes later, bam, bam, bam.
Wasn't the
bam.
cops banging on the door or nothing?
No, it was the sprinkler system hitting the side of the siding right outside the window.
And making that noise.
It was off aim for a little bit. And the owner's like, oh my gosh, can you imagine if a guest was there? How frustrating that would be.
Absolutely.
So my owners, at first, they're like, that's kind of weird, you're going to stay in my house. And afterwards, I usually send them a whole
You're like,
report.
you think it's weird? I'm staying at your house. You're going to have a bunch of people staying at your house. Let's go with
I
that.
have had that conversation, yeah.
Let's talk about weird.
But, yeah, they're like, okay. And then after, I usually send them a report with everything, you know, the good, the bad, and things we need to work on. And it's like, it's really surprising how much is known by somebody else being in your house.
No, it's like anything, right? Another different pair of eyes that's seeing it, and you can give them that perspective of the experience of what it's like, plus things they can do to enhance it. That's pretty cool.
So
and you get to stay in a lot of cool places.
If I've got to go play pool at somebody's house, or Pac-Man machine, or ride their kayaks, you know, those are things I have to do to test it out.
Yeah, what a tough job, Bob. I'm so sorry you have to sacrifice yourself that way.
I do what I have to do.
Don't we feel bad for him? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'll take the hit.
Yeah, right? You take one for the team. I love it. Okay, so this is pretty fascinating, actually. I had no idea there's so much to this. You just think, you know, you buy a house and you throw it up there and you say, come rent. You know, we think everybody wants to just go to the beach or go to the mountains, but there's a whole lot of other things that go into it to make sure the experience is there and that people are going to want to rent again with you, right?
It's a 5-star experience. Yeah, that's
5-star experience.
And then people ask me, sometimes they ask, you know, so what's the downside of turning into a short-term rental, and what's the upside of it? The downside is sometimes neighbors and all may have an issue with short-term rental.
Even if it's allowed?
Even if it's allowed,
okay,
they may have an issue with it. So my recommendation is you talk to them. Let them know what's going on. Let them know what you're doing. You know, just try to be as open as you can. And most of the time, if you have that conversation, they're much more welcome.
Right.
I actually take a letter to all the neighbors in the neighborhood and just say, hey, this is who we are. If there's an issue, please call us. The upside of a short-term rental versus an LTR, a long-term rental, is the revenue is usually 2 times more, sometimes 3 times more. Another upside is that house stays in immaculate condition, because if anything goes wrong, it gets fixed immediately because you've got guests coming in 3 days. So that has to be taken care of.
Good point.
It gets cleaned
regularly,
week, 3 times a week.
Okay.
I mean, it stays.
Yeah.
When we started renting our house, my son was like, oh my gosh, I love this, because our house has never looked this good. It didn't. I mean, when you're renting it, if you've got a spot on the wall, if you're just living there, you're like, oh, that's fine for our family. But you're renting it, you're like, no, I got to get that fixed.
No. Interesting.
You won't get stuck with a long-term renter you don't like. And usually with a long-term rental, you basically have to pull the carpet, do the walls, you have to do everything.
Yeah.
Short-term rental, you don't have that situation.
Yeah.
If you have a long-term rental you don't like, you're stuck with them. You have a short-term rental you don't like,
it's
they're
only
gone in
short
3
days.
days.
That's right.
Boom, you're out of here.
Yeah.
So those are the reasons people like it. The downside is there's a little bit of the reputation. You hear about, you know, the parties and things that happen. In the news, only the bad side of Airbnb gets.
That's news, right?
Yeah.
We all know that. There's no fun in reporting the good stuff.
And, you know, I tell people there's the other side. I've walked into my house, and you would never know anyone was there. I mean, I thought my cleaning person had showed up, but the locks didn't indicate. So I finally called the people. I said, "Is
anybody around? Did anybody show up? Anybody call?"
She goes, "Yeah, I thought you would ask this." She goes, 3 of our people are ex-military. When they leave a house clean, they leave it clean.
This is true. This is a really good point.
And I've had renters say, "Hey, you know, we noticed something was broken or whatever. I saw you guys had tools. We just went ahead and fixed it."
Wow.
And, you know, there's all kinds of really neat, cool things that happen. We've had 3
what's
weddings.
been kind of a funny sort of story? I mean, what's some couple little
We've had,
scenarios that that you can share?
3 micro weddings at our lake house,
Oh,
which is kind of cool. And my kids will look on Instagram and go, "Hey, that's our house. Hey, these people got married at our house."
Well, that's cool. All right, so you can have different events going on, and depending on the type of property you have, that's another avenue of it, though, because that's not a renter. That's just an event and a venue, right? But then they stay there. Is that what happens?
Yeah, and most people don't like to have a full wedding there. And the only ones we've had is the people have said, "Hey, we want to have a micro wedding. It'll be 8 to 10 people, our family, his family, very small, because you don't want to imposition your neighbors with a large event going on. You want to be as respectful as possible to the neighbors, and that's so key to
All right,
this
that's
business.
good. That's a good idea. Yeah, you don't want to upset people. All right, cool. So what else? What's the kind of parting words, advice, if you are thinking that this might be an avenue to explore? What are some things you got to really get your act together, kind of thing?
There's two sides. One, there's the education side of it, and that's probably the hardest. But I mean, to me, it's fun. I think I've read 9 Airbnb books. I'm on probably 5 podcasts listening every week, a number of YouTube channels, probably 5 Facebook groups about Airbnb hosts and all. And I've really enjoyed the learning side of it. I think that's as crucial as anything. And then just experience, I work with my owners, and they're like, "Oh, this situation's come up. How would you handle it?" I'm like, "Oh, I got this." And boom, done deal. They're like, "How did you know that?" I said, "Well, I've been lucky to go through it before."
Right.
So you kind of juggle this. From my perspective, I juggle. I have owners who own these houses and care about the houses. I have to take care of them, and then I have guests who are staying there, and I have to take care of them too. So my mantra when I talk with my owners, my goal is 3 goals. 1, I want to protect the house. So I have a pretty serious screening process to make sure it's not going to be a big blowout party, spring break event, whatever. I want to protect the house, and I want to make life as easy as possible for the owner, and then I want to get the best return on investment we can possibly get. So I use a lot of outside tools. I have a tool that helps me optimize rankings. I have a tool that does dynamic pricing, which fluctuates pricing based on season, well, even occupancy.
Oh, occupancy.
So if there's an event coming in town, prices go up.
Oh, okay.
And then I custom code that to play it out against how occupancy rates are based on the time in the future. And I use a lot of tools and syncing calendars, automated messaging, and just really trying to control and get the best.
As many variables as you can, and then help them be, this is really interesting. Honestly, this is really a space that I don't know anything about, and I thought maybe people don't know much about it either, but yet everybody looks at that, wouldn't it be fun if, right? We all dream, we want to have that place and that second place or home, and then also make it maybe profitable if that's something you want to do. Some people just buy them and it's for their personal use, and that's awesome too. So, but if you are looking into that, I mean, then you're in North Carolina, South Carolina, or Virginia, Bob is certainly a great resource to reach out to. Anyone have a question? I just want to make sure if anybody, our viewers are out there, if somebody would like to ask a question about it, please do, and we can answer that. And I'll just check if there's any. I don't see any coming through, so I just want to make sure, because we've got some people out there watching. I want to make sure that they can ask a question if they feel like that's something they need to do.
I'll kind of toss in one of. So it used to be about 3 or 4 years ago, you could put up an Airbnb or VRBO and probably do pretty well without a lot of effort. The market has grown about 3x in 3 years. So
meaning
3 times as many places to be able to rent.
Oh, so there's more options.
There's 3 times as many options. So you really have to work.
You got to stand out.
Yeah,
like anything, you got to stand out.
Well, it's standing out, but you also have to work. You have to update your listings regularly, update your prices regularly, change your titling regularly, market to outside websites now. Now I set up Facebook pages for all my listings. I set up a Google My Business account. I run Facebook ads for them. I put them on Pinterest. I do a lot of stuff that 3 years ago we didn't have to do. Now, to be profitable,
more competition.
Yeah, you've got to beat the competition. And that's what I like to do, is beat the competition.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, Bob, how do people get in touch with you if they want to learn more, know more, or even maybe engage your services? How do they do that?
I have a website. It's cohostbob.com. COHOST Bob.com, and pretty well all my information is there. Or call you.
Yeah, you can call me and I'll get you to Bob, but, you know, or call Bob. Yeah. Awesome.
Cohostbob.com is
Okay.
probably the easiest way to reach me.
All right, fantastic. Sorry, get me. Well, we never got a fire going. That's pretty sad. This is the saddest fire ever. It's just a bunch of, I don't know what's going on, but anyway.
It's the perfect fire for the temperature.
It is a perfect fire for the temperature, but
Yeah.
this is a solo stove. It's not supposed to be smoky, so not a good look for the solo stove today. But it's about Bob. So anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in. We're going to sign off. Again, this is Dishing with Diana Fireside Chat. And take care. Thanks.